Sector Report is proudly brought to you by Tower, Rural Insurance Specialists.
Welcome to Tower Sector Report. I'm David Beatson, and in this edition, 3 sectors looking for a future. Organic farmers dig in after Fonterra downsizes their business. Wool growers look for a strategy as the new season sales get underway. And grape growers get over their glut and start looking for profits. Fonterra was gung-ho about organic milk last year. It had its organic dairy products in 9,000 retail outlets around the world. It was forecasting 150% growth in demand over the next 5 years. And it had more than doubled its supply requirements. The future was green and getting greener. But that was last year, before consumers hit the sharp end of the global recession. Now consumers are scaling back their spending. Fonterra is scaling back its organic business. It'll honour its existing contracts with suppliers to their termination dates, but after that, it's going to be transiting some of them out of the program. Our Rural Affairs correspondent, Drew Chappell, has been checking out the reaction out on the farm.
Organic is a funny word. Technically, it means relating to, derived from, or characteristic of living things. In its strictest sense then, all of our farms are organic. That is, they all produce food from living things. So why has one little word caused so much controversy in recent weeks? It's because in farming, the word organic is usually accompanied by another one: certified.
We decided to have a go at it because we were trying to farm organically previous to that. We were definitely keen, so they offered us an incentive, so we thought we'd have a go. So we signed up for 6 years, and we're currently in our 4th year this season.
Murray Moxham and his family run more than 700 head of cattle here, just out of Levin in the Manawatu. Murray's farmed here for more than 40 years, but only switched over to organic in 2009. Committing after Fonterra's national recruitment drive had been through the area. At that time, the dairy giant was focused on promoting organic conversions in order to take advantage of the international premium. But as anyone who has been through the process will tell you, it's not as cheap or as easy as it sounds.
With the organic pickup, the problems they've been having, they wanted us to hold 2 days of milk on farm. So we had to increase our size of our milk vats, and that involved lifting roofs and big refrigeration units and installation, which is like $30,000 to $40,000. So there is costs.
As recently as this time last year, Fonterra was waxing lyrical about the potential for organic dairy, predicting a more than 140% increase over the next 5 years on the back of huge global demand for organic produce. At that time, we exported to more than 9,000 outlets in dozens of countries worldwide. But just 12 months on, and how times have changed. In late August, Fonterra announced they were scaling down their operation, meaning more than half of the country's organic farmers would no longer be paid a premium for their product. The co-op cited transport and logistical costs as the main reason for the change, saying,
"Research shows people are now less willing to pay the premium for organic products. In addition, consumers are gaining more confidence that everyday products are being produced more sustainably and are more acceptable, so they no longer see the need to pay the premium for most organic products."
Fonterra stated their organics business was running at a loss, and the moves to cut suppliers down would go some way towards getting it to break even. The co-op will establish a central organic hub in the Waikato, at Hautapu, south of Hamilton. Only dairy farmers near the processor will continue to receive premiums for their organic milk beyond the current contract period. That leaves farmers like Murray out in the cold.
A huge outfit like Fonterra, with their business model, they definitely got it way wrong, and it's been a huge process for us, and they can fix it by the flick of a finger, but we cop the flack over it all, so yeah, very disappointing.
Murray's contract with Fonterra still has 2 years to run, so he's not in immediate trouble, but says the decision will still force him to make some tough calls in the near future. So what are your options from here then?
Well, we haven't got a lot at the moment, but it's only been a week since the announcement. We're hoping somebody else might decide to produce organic products. We've thought about doing it ourselves, but it's just too early in the time since they've announced it to make a definite decision yet. Yeah. But 2 years is a long time. You know, it's just showing that 4 years is a long time with organic production. You know, how they can be craving for it 1 year and don't want to know about it the next. So that's farming, I guess. You just got to work within their ideas.
Gray Beagley is the Federated Farmers spokesperson on organics, running a 200-strong certified organic milking herd in Woodville, near Palmerston North. Gray says the announcement from Fonterra will have taken everyone by surprise.
It's an exciting time, the transition, because it's a new way of farming for us and exciting. And disappointing that something we really believe in that's just going to be downsized. All the media, all the Fonterra releases were saying that the only side to organics was up. Even through the recession there was growth, and no other sector in the food production area could claim that. A huge shock that now it's a loss-making proposition and the demand's not there.
After a recent meeting with Fonterra representatives, Gray and other organic farmers were told their existing contracts would be honoured and the premium paid for their milk would continue. He says while that's good news, it's certainly not what they were hoping for.
Financially, we won't be in any worse position for the next 4 years. We were under the impression that maybe we could go back into a Fonterra organic program if things turned around, but we were told at the meeting that don't hold your breath. We probably will not be picking up organic milk in the southern North Island again.
As for Fonterra's argument that consumers have come to trust standard milk, Gray says it simply doesn't hold water.
I've previously been a conventional farmer and I know what happens out there. If you go to scientific papers testing residues in our butters, our milk and our cheeses, every conventional, I think it was 100% of conventional product had pesticide residues in it. You go to organic ones and they're proven not to, and they're audited by a third party to guarantee that they've got no residues of harmful chemicals. And so saying that the conventional supplies becoming more trusted, I think that's a company line.
One thing that is sure though, both men are certainly converts to the organic system, and this latest hurdle hasn't dulled their enthusiasm.
I feel there's more advantages than conventional, like our animal health costs have just disappeared and they are substantial today. You can spend $200 on one cow with mastitis, no trouble at all, where we just don't have all those problems anymore. So we've got good healthy cows now, very low cost farming, and it's just far more enjoyable, stress-free, and all our staff absolutely love it, and we have people ringing up looking for work because they want to work on organic farms.
Organics has a lot of the answers, I think, to the problems we're facing with pollution. We've witnessed in our 3 years deeper root systems, like 10 times deeper than what we had. So this is a filtration system for nutrients travelling through the soil. We're gaining topsoil. You can see the organic matter building up. We run slightly lower stocking rates, so the stock intensity is not there. So there's all these things that I think are going to be the answers down the track.
Drew Chappell reporting. Well, our wool growers are pondering their future too, but what are their prospects of seeing a new plan that could improve their profitability? We talk to the man at the top. That's coming next on Tower Sector Report. Welcome back to Tower Sector Report. Well, New Zealand wool growers and the broader wool industry have been talking about planning for a long time. Sheep produce around 16% of the world's wool supply. Prices have been picking up in the last year, but most of the last 25 years we've seen our wool growing in decline. The government now wants to see a united industry speaking with a collective voice about its strategic path. And now it's the first anniversary of the formation of the Wool Group. That's the group charged by the government with the task of bringing the choir together. We're looking to the chairman, Colin Harvey, to give us a progress report. Colin, welcome. Let me start. The Agriculture Minister appointed you a year ago and he said you and your group had your work cut out. What have you stitched together?
Well, it's still a process and it's going to take some time.
So it's still cut out?
Yeah, it's still cut out, but we have made, I think, good progress in the last 12 months. It is a very, how would you say, disjointed group of people. They're hard to get them around the table. They have completely different philosophies at where they see the market and how they see markets functioning. You know, we have the traditional wool traders that go back. Wool trade is probably one of the oldest wool trades in the world. You know, it goes back centuries. Through to the new value chain type organisations like New Zealand Merino, where they try and sell a package from the farm right through to the end user. So there's a big differences.
Okay, but what are the real sticking points? I mean, are these generally competing interests within the industry? I mean, do they see themselves in tension with each other all the time?
Yes, I think that's the problem, and also it hasn't helped that we've had a number of sort of major, what would you call, reconstruction exercises happening within the industry over that time.
I'll come back on that, some aspects of that in a minute, but I'd really like to sort of say, okay, you got into it. Your background is in animal health. Have you actually got into the farming side of it?
Well, I actually do own a sheep farm these days called Lake Mackay Station, which is a fine wool merino property.
So that's why the merinos, the good guys.
I have to be very careful with that. I've stayed out of New Zealand Merino, and I'm purely a farmer, and I'm not a shareholder. So I've tried to maintain an independence, but obviously I have an interest in wool.
Yeah, okay. Let me just sort of pick up on that and say you must have a view on where the opportunities are.
Well, I think the industry all needs each other. You know what I mean? I think that's something they're not very good at recognising, that we can establish value chains, and Just Shorn and the Levine brand and the New Zealand Merino, these people, and Cavalier, of course, who are a very successful value chain in their own right. These people are a value chain where it's taking wool from off the farmer's back right through to the consumer, and we need those. But at the same time, we'll never quit all our wool through those sort of value chains. We're still going to have to trade a substantial proportion of our wool to other people, and hence the traditional traders have a role. So they do have a mutual independence. The problem is they're not very good at recognising it sometimes.
Okay, but where does the balance sit now? Because I detect a sense that it has changed, that whereas the traditional traders actually were dominant, that they're less dominant now.
The actual volume, the traders still handle the majority of the wool, there's no question. But there has been an increase in this, what we call value chain marketing.
But is that really good, or is it just sexy stuff?
It has a place, and it has a place because it brings with it increased value to the end user, because you're linking the end user more closely to the consumer, and therefore the end user gets a higher proportion of the value. With trading, of course, you lose complete control of any of the value chain, and you're really determined on wool prices.
So after 25 years of decline, you're beginning to see some improvement in prices, some firming in prices and good prospects. Is that going to make it harder or easier to actually lift the level of coordination across the industry?
It probably makes it a little harder, isn't it? The going's
I thought you might say that.
And that the going's a bit easier. But at the same time, we have this repositioning of wool, and wool is a fantastic and sustainable fibre and has many natural benefits. We should see wool into the future as an active ingredient for new uses rather than as a commodity. And putting it in that sort of framework allows us to reconfigure it in terms of new uses, but it also means we're going to have to ensure we keep the integrity of the wool in place, and that means we're going to have to start looking at things like on-farm standards. With New Zealand Merino, one of the interesting aspects that they have done is they have got a significant advantage in the fine wool merino area, because they have control of animal welfare standards, and particularly mulesling on farms, and that has meant they've got the advantage over the Australian producers. We can similarly place ourselves within the coarse wool industry by improving that on-farm standards area. Now, in my opinion, it's low-hanging fruit, because our farms are very sustainable, both environmentally and animal welfare, and it's really a matter of just, how would you say, getting our act together to prove that.
One of the setbacks in the last year in terms of industry coordination was the unsuccessful effort to pull a grower cooperative together. Do you see that as a serious issue? How serious is it?
I don't think it's fundamentally serious, because the other side of that has been the re-emergence of pine gold Guinness Wrightsons back into a major interest in wool, and that's good in its own right, because the cooperative was going to take those interests up. It's another aspect. It would have been nice to see the cooperative get off the ground, because it would have shown that foundation level of farmer support. At the same time, you can understand why farmers are a bit wary of committing themselves.
Final quick yes-no answer to this question. Can you see a quick circuit breaker?
No, there isn't. I think slowly the industry is coming together. We are getting there. The campaign for wool, which is the other sort of happening, which is funded out of the UK, or started out of the UK by Prince Charles, is another aspect that is gathering momentum and drawing people into it. There's lots of good stuff happening, but it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Slowly and softly.
Yes, very much, David.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. Colin Harvey, Chairman of the Wool Group. And coming up, what's the future for grape growers and fine New Zealand wine? Stay with Tower Sector Report. Welcome back to Tower Sector Report. Well, 2008 was a bumper vintage for New Zealand wine, but it wasn't too great for grape growers and winemakers. Grapes and wine were soon both in gross oversupply. Grape prices peaked at around $2,600 a tonne in 2008, but it's been downhill since then for grapes, for wine and for vineyard values. The industry, however, has made a lot of adjustments over that time, and the emphasis at the Wine Growers New Zealand conference last week seemed to have shifted from volume management to value management. But is there consensus on just what that means? Our next guest is Wine Growers Chairman Stuart Smith. Stuart, welcome.
Thank you.
What does it mean?
Well, value growth means to grow the value of our exports overseas rather than to grow volume. We've had a supply imbalance, which we've now almost got back into balance. In fact, this year we believe there will be a shortage of wine, particularly the sales are going so well that we think by the end of this calendar year there will already be tension coming into the market.
You mean that we'll see prices start to firm?
Well, one would hope so.
You'd hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think whether you'll see that on the shelf in the supermarket is another question. But certainly, what we will start to see is price tension come into the market in the trading of bulk wine, which is sort of a safety valve where wineries trade surplus wine between wineries. So we'll see that start to firm, and ultimately that will flow through to the market.
Tell me, how has this rebalancing occurred? Because according to some statistics I've seen, in fact, we've only seen about 500 hectares of around 33,000 hectares of vine-planted land taken out of production.
Well, in 2010, the industry got together and limited its supply. So we went from 285,000 tonnes down to 265,000 tonnes all the time.
Is that exactly what happened?
Yes.
I mean, that was what you talked about, but did it really happen in fact?
It did in fact happen in 2010. In 2011, we were asked by the industry for guidance as to what we thought was a long-term sustainable and easily market-led production number. We came out with 265,000 tonnes again. We thought that that would bring some tension into the market and see prices start to go up. As an interesting aside for that statement in industry leadership, I was investigated by the Commerce Commission, so
Yeah,
it's something to put on my CV, I suppose. But that didn't occur. We in fact we actually produced 328,000 tonnes, but that was to underpin
What influence you have?
what influence I have. It absolutely shows the value in the Commerce Commission's investigation. But the industry needed to produce 328,000 tonnes because the tanks were empty. The sales that we had made needed to be underpinned by volume going through into the next year. So the industry has got the sales up to match its productive capacity pretty much.
Okay. You had Rabobank's global beverage strategist Ross Colbert at your conference, and he said that consumer spending habits and values have altered fundamentally. Now, what did he mean when he said that? I mean, in what direction? Is this everybody wants low price, or everybody wants... what is it that's altered fundamentally?
Well, consumers, in the US in particular, consumers now are tending to consume at home more rather than out when they're out. So that's altered consumer buying preferences. But consumers are looking for something different, something innovative. And I think that was one of his messages. He certainly gave an example. He's a beverage expert rather than a wine expert, so which was very useful. He covers a number of the entire beverage sector. But he showed an example of a energy drink producer. You know, the world needs another energy drink like a hole in the head, you would think. But he showed an example of an innovative producer who's taken the world by storm.
Okay, but let me ask you this. I mean, we're dealing with difficult international conditions. And on top of that, we're actually seeing you guys deal with the rise in the GST, an increase in excise, and also new restrictions on marketing. You put that all together, and that's a difficult picture. Are you insulated against that by the fact that you are exporting so much of your product?
Well, the local market is where a lot of the new brands and the new wineries actually cut their teeth. They make all their mistakes, hopefully, in the local market, and then they're able to go out and make it in the big wide world as an exporter. So the local market's incredibly important to New Zealanders. It also underpins the profitability of all the industry. But unfortunately, we seem to be getting hit from every direction, and the excise tax has morphed from a consumer tax into a producer tax. And then when we get hit as well with the government-induced rise in the CPI by the increase in GST, I mean, that just adds insult to industry, to injury.
To injury,
yes.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, just in terms of that impact on the industry, what does that do for the innovation that Ross Colbert was talking about?
Well, it stifles it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, is the writing on the wall for small vineyards, for small producers?
Small vineyards, no, because it's actually very easy to virtually integrate vineyards. You don't have to amalgamate assets, but you can quite easily treat neighbouring vineyards as one, as long as you have agreement and you get the economies of scale that way. Small wineries, well, if we're going to integrate, then that's going to have a sort of a slight loss in ego, because egos tend to get in the way quite often. I think that there will be more, and there certainly needs to be more in the small vineyard, small winery area. There absolutely has to be some consolidation there. The question is, what is going to be the catalyst that causes that? And one would hope that people do it on their own terms rather than being forced to do it. But
well, we've seen a situation where in a number of cases they have literally been forced out of the business. Are we seeing a real trend now towards consolidation, towards contraction, if you like, of the number of players and scaling up?
We are seeing some steps in that direction, but not as much as I would have hoped. There will always be a place for the very small, but we only want a few of the very small rather than too many, because it just becomes uneconomic. The route to market is the key in most consumer goods, and there's only room for so many players.
We'll keep track of progress. Stuart, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The chairman of Wine Growers New Zealand, Stuart Smith. And that's all for now. Remember, you can catch our show again anytime via the internet at www.country99tv.co.nz. Thanks for your company. I'm David Beatson for Tower Sector Report. Bye for now.
Sector Report was proudly brought to you by Tower, Rural Insurance Specialists.